Hello, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Bethan, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, for the watchers, for the people kind of taking this in today, Amy and I met recently, and we wanted to dive in and share Amy's business story because we got chatting about it, and I found the whole thing fascinating. But bit of background: Amy is a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and is really passionate about what she does, but does everything that she does online through this program called the Female Formula to help women lose weight, tone up, get their energy back, all that sort of good stuff. And especially focusing in on what they need in each phase of life, like considering their hormones and their metabolism. So I'm going to hand over to you to add in anything there that you want to share with the people watching about you and your business.
Oh, thank you. That was a perfect intro.
Oh,
Would you like me to dive straight into like my background and business story, or
let's
should
do
we
it.
start
Let's
somewhere
do it.
else? Yeah, cool. How long you got? I always struggle to think about exactly where to start with my business journey because when you've been working for yourself for 11 years, like I have now, like a
Yep.
lot of things change over that time. But I guess people listening to this episode, like they're in the early days of their business. And so there's just so much to get your head around in that early time and so many lessons to learn. But before I started working in health and fitness, I worked in marketing, like in corporate, but it wasn't my jam. It never felt like that was my calling in life. But if I go like way back to when I was younger, I had a lot of issues with my weight. I was underweight, I was overweight. I had hormone imbalances, period problems, body confidence issues. I was not in a good mental or physical shape for most of my younger life. And it wasn't really till I was in my mid to late 20s that I started discovering what true health and fitness could look like. I started reading about nutrition, changing what I was eating, and I was like, oh my God, this is a game changer for me.
Mm.
I feel so much better. I look so much better. So
Yeah.
I requalified as a PT at the same time that I still had my corporate job. So I was working in a marketing agency, 9 to 5, hating life. But then I became qualified as a PT, and very quickly I was working in the gym, coaching clients in the morning, going into my office job, and then I was coaching clients again in the evening and at the weekends. And even within that first 6 months, I was paying myself a good
Yeah.
salary. And like if you just go all in, and there was no plan B for me, it was only ever plan A. And then the dream became to own my own fitness studio. I think that is like the ultimate goal for a lot of personal trainers. It's kind of funny because it was super scary, and it only really became a goal for me because that was what I was being told should be the goal.
Right. Yeah.
It
It was
was
like that
always,
was the next step that existed.
yeah, I didn't know how else to grow and progress unless I went ahead and built a team and had my own
Right.
studio. So I went ahead and did that, and I launched the studio in Bristol, where I live. And I ran that for 5 years, and it grew and it was really successful. I had a team of staff working for me, a ton of clients, and our clients were getting great results. We specialized in working with women primarily in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, like coaching, strength training, and fat loss. And there were some good times, but there were some very, very hard times. It was the most stressful thing I've ever
Yeah.
done in my life by far. Eventually, my health actually really started to suffer as a result of
Right.
that, which was pretty ironic because
Yeah.
I was helping other people to better their health.
And funny
But
enough, we've got episodes about kind of both sides, actually, the physical aspect of health and well-being, but also the mental aspect of health and well-being for online business owners. And I think it's almost like glossed over.
yeah,
It is very important, but we have this attitude, like you were saying about the transition period out of corporate to running your own business. You just get this like drive and internal energy that makes you overlook anything else. So you don't consider your own health and well-being a lot of the time when you're in that early phase, because you're like, I just need to make this happen almost at any cost. And it's only once you kind of settle into a business and you go for a few years, you realize oh, I can't do this forever and it's going to catch up with me. And yeah, I push anyone watching to go and check out those episodes as well. If this relates to you and you're feeling like, oh my God, been there, get that. There's a little bit of insight that we give around kind of how the hell do you start breaking those plans and prioritizing yourself. But for you, you made a very drastic change once your health started to decrease.
I did. I decided to sell up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like what you're saying about that drive and that energy and determination that just makes you push through it.
Yeah.
That was exactly where I was. It was tunnel vision. And there's a bit of a belief, I guess, around like when you start a new business, the first 2 years might be a bit like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to put a lot of work in. And then after that 2-year point, that kind of magical, after the 2-year point,
yeah,
everything's going to fall into place.
Oh, it's just magically.
Yeah, everything's just like you're cruising then, everything's sorted. And I guess I had that in my head. I was like, okay, for 2 years, I'm going to work all the hours, throw myself into this, and then things are going to get easier. And it's like, I waited another year, still didn't get easier. You just get different problems. And then another year, didn't get easier, just different problems. And I reevaluated my life as a whole. I wasn't spending enough time doing the things that I wanted to be doing with my friends, my family, my husband. And it was in 2020 that I decided to draw a line in the sand and make a big change and sell my business. Everyone that I speak to assumes that I sold my gym because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, the gym's closed, quickly, let's sell it. But I'd actually decided in the January of 2020 that I was going to sell it.
Right.
And I put it on the market in March 2020. So it took me a whole year to sell it. So that was a pretty testing time, I can tell you.
I can imagine.
But I had to make sure that the buyer was the right person and would look after my baby, look after my clients and my baby. But like I was saying before, there were a few things that led me to this decision. Like my health was not in a good place. As I mentioned before, when I was younger, I was like underweight and overweight. And so I had that kind of background of eating disorders. And then the stress of running this business kind of made all of that resurface.
Right.
And I ended up with binge eating disorder and bulimia for a couple of years. And that's very difficult when you're a health and fitness coach.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you're not able to fully practice what you're preaching because you can't get a handle on yourself. Right. And this was just all a result of high stress. I had too much stress in my life and I couldn't find a way to cope.
Yeah. So, and it's funny how the mind works, that it will give you a way to cope whether you want it or not. Like this is just what's going to happen unless you pay attention to the fact that your stress is this elevated.
And I was reading this book, you may have read it, it's called The Big Leap by, I think the author is Gay Hendricks. Very good book. He talks about making sure that in your business you are within your zone of genius. That's what he calls it. And sometimes when like you're struggling in a particular business or within a particular role, it's because you're not operating in your zone of genius. I remember lying in the bath and I was reading this book. It was like, that's it. Like I'm not in my zone of genius.
Yeah. Just like a light bulb moment.
Yeah. And I got out of the bath and I said to Ollie, my husband, I'm going to sell the business and I'm going to do online coaching instead. I think that's what I'm meant to be doing. And so he's like, okay, cool. Let's do it. And it's just that one decision. And I just made my mind up. I knew, like, I really felt it, deep intuition that was the best step for me. And after I sold the business, I actually didn't work for a whole year. A lot of people would come up to me and be like, you going back to work yet? And I was like, no, I'm recovering. I'm healing. Like, I'm restoring, like I'm getting myself back. And
you're catching up on all those evenings and weekends and the time off that you didn't have for however many years.
Yeah. And it really did take me that full year to recuperate and create a good plan for how I was sustainably going to run a business going forward that was serving me and was serving my clients, because I had it the wrong way around before. it was like clients first and then me. And that's why the business that I have now, which is 100% online coaching with Body Theory by Amy, it works for both of us, me and my clients.
And I guess, right, this is might be a hard question to answer, but I'm going to ask it and see what comes to mind for you. You now have this online business that is much more flexible and works for you. And the brick and mortar business you found wasn't in the same kind of realm, well, you weren't able to build it out in that way. What do you think is the difference that allows you to have so much more flexibility in the online space versus the brick and mortar one?
The way of working is just totally different. So if you are a personal trainer in a gym, then you're basically trading time for money the whole time.
Yeah.
Like your diary is just packed full of 30 to 60 minute coaching sessions with clients, and that those are typically stacked in the morning before people go to work. You'll then get like the semi-retired people in the middle of the day, or the self-employed people in the middle of the day that have more flexible time frame, and then you're working in the evening because everyone wants training after work. So the days are very long. And for a lot of coaches, they don't even have clients in the middle of the day. So they get up early, coach clients for hours, have a nap in the afternoon, catch up on their admin, and then they're back in the gym in the evening, like till 8 p.m, 9 p.m. Some people even work till 10 p.m. And then also weekends. It's sort of like you're always on. Whereas with online coaching, there's so many more different ways of structuring your business, whether you want to do group coaching or one-to-one coaching, or you have like a membership site or whatever it is, so that you can think about what you want your life to look like first, and then you can plug your business into that.
Love that.
Much more flexibly.
Yeah, and that it kind of comes back to me for the expectation that we were talking about earlier, that you were saying the next step, the expectation was like, well, I've got to set up my own studio. Like that's the only reasonable next step that you could see. And I think it's a lot of the same with brick and mortar businesses. They've been around for so long that there's just expectations on how they work. Whereas with online businesses, it's still such a new space that everyone has their own way of doing it. And if you've worked with a coach before, it might look completely different the second time around. And it's like there isn't that set expectation from our clients and consumers of what we're going to do and what it's going to look like. They're buying into our program based on how it's designed. So they know before they sign up, but they don't come to us being like, well, I'm going to get this.
Yeah, there are so many different ways of slicing up what an online coaching business is going to look like. And probably the way that I'm doing things now, 2 years down the line, I'll be doing them differently again. Like you continually evolve and tweak and adjust depending on what's working for you and what's working for your client. There's so many more options. Like some of the coaches within my network, they will coach workouts over Zoom. Like that's not what I do, because that's not the way that I like to work. But they will, physically do training sessions over Zoom.
Yeah.
And then I know other coaches that don't ever see their clients. They just have Voxer conversations. Yeah, if you haven't heard what Voxer is, it's kind of like sending voice notes over WhatsApp, but it's like a more of a live conversation back and forth. Like it's pretty exciting. Possibly, like as you say, because brick and mortars have been around for so long, there is an expectation of the way to do it. Whereas online businesses, although internet business has been around for a good while now, it's still relatively in its infancy. And with the development of things like AI and God knows what else is going to change over the next few years, there's just so many more options for the way that we can work. And I'm so grateful for online coaching and the ability to do that, because now I can reach anybody in the world at any time. And one thing that I love to do now is that I'm able to look at my diary on a weekly basis and think, what does Amy need? Like, what do I need to do for me this week? And all of that goes into my diary first.
Nice.
And then I can plan all my business work around that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's one of the things with brick and mortar businesses. It's not just the business. It's not just the clients. It's also that you're the boss. So you have to be available for your staff for issues in the same way. Whereas in an online business, like if your clients' expectations are aligned and they know when to expect to hear from you, they know that maybe you're off on this Tuesday, or they're going to hear back from you within 24 hours and everything will be fine. There's not that like looming pressure, I feel like, in the same way. Whereas when you have a brick and mortar business and your phone goes off and it's someone from the gym, like, I don't, whether you're off, whether you're on holiday, like, it's drop everything, work needs me. And I feel like that really doesn't exist in the same way in an online space either.
Yeah, definitely. It's not quite the same. Like if you're meant to open at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is what we used to do, and then I have a staff member calling me at 5:30 a.m. when I'm in bed saying that they're sick. It's like, okay, we need to get on this and sort out the whole day's calendar, so I haven't got clients knocking on the door because they don't have a trainer. And it's not to say that going forward I won't have a team of coaches that support me and work with me, but I'll definitely be thinking about different ways of working so that it's optimized.
It's more flexible. And I never had a brick and mortar business because the marketing agency I ran, it was online, but I was definitely being kind of hurried down that path. And people recommended to me like, oh, well, when are you going to get an office? That's the big next step that you should take. And I kind of pushed back against that and kept my team online. But it does bridge the gap somewhat, because you do have the kind of the marketing agency I see as much more of a traditional business than my business coaching. It is still very, very big swings between how the two function, because we're operating with brick and mortar businesses sometimes. And so they like, well, this is how business runs. Like, this is just how things are done. And it's funny how you see it so clearly as being in the two sides, or in your view, like having been in the brick and mortar space and now being in the online. It's night and day.
It really is. And you're like a really good inspiration to me, actually, because you are traveling and working, right? And that's something that is definitely on the goal list for me. I want to be able to see the world. I've seen a lot of the world, actually. I have this goal, and I don't know if I'm going to achieve it, but by the time I'm 40, I want to have visited 40 countries. And so I've got about 18 months to do that.
Nice.
And I've got about 6 countries to go. So I love to travel. And like, I want that to be part of the way that I work. Like, I can go and visit new places, but I'm still working at the same time, but I'm also like traveling and exploring. And I love that idea. And you're doing a very similar thing over in Albania right now. So I think that's super cool.
Thank you. And this is the thing, the online space opens up so much possibility. And I speak to people and I've had feedback of like, oh, well, I don't want to travel. And I'm like, that's fine. But like, do you have kids or do you have anything in your life that, and most of the time it's like, oh yeah, I wanted my own business because I wanted more flexibility. And now I've realized I have none. And it's like, how do you embed that in? Going back, I'm curious to know, what were your biggest challenges going through that transition of having a brick and mortar business to then having an online business? How did you deal with the changes yourself, and how did you kind of build out a business while having in your head how a business was run previously? Like, how did you adapt and change to show that in what your business is today?
Great question. And my number one piece of advice, if you're trying to learn something new, do something new, learn from someone who has already done it, because it makes your journey and your learning process a lot quicker and a lot easier. So I work with a business and a marketing coach who was previously a brick and mortar fitness studio owner.
Nice.
Then she was an online fitness coach, and now she's a business coach, an incredible business coach. Like, she's been there and done it. So it really shortcuts that route to success when you can learn from someone else that's already done it, already figured out what works, what doesn't. And like, if I hadn't have got help, I would be just flailing around.
Like, I'm sure if you were to come at this without any of that support, it would be like, well, this is what I did last time, so like I'll just do that again, even though you're applying that to then something completely different and it might not necessarily work in the same way. But yeah, it's hard to get rid of the things already in your brain if you don't have someone kind of guiding that route for you.
Yeah, and one thing that she has really helped me to understand is that you don't just recreate the same business online.
Yes.
So like your operating procedures and everything, really, the look and feel, just all of it is going to be different. It's not just taking your previous business and kind of meshing and molding that somehow into an online version, which is challenging in itself because you're having to rethink things from the ground up, but actually exciting as well because you're getting to create something new.
And what are the couple of things that you've done that have worked really well for you in building up this online business to what it is today?
I think a big part of it has been having the confidence to put myself out there on social media. Like social media is a big part of growing an online brand. And I think a lot of people are quite reluctant to share themselves and their business openly and consistently on social media, and to continue doing it even when it feels like there's just crickets coming back. And so that has been a big part of the strategy for me, just totally bringing myself, like my personal life, who I am, and my business life into my social media channel, so people get to understand all of me and what my clients have achieved and what I do and how I work and what I believe and all of that, and just being relentlessly consistent. Like I will post on social media, I won't say 7 days a week, I'll say 6 days a week. Be consistent with it. Be vulnerable, like show you, like don't think you have to be like super businessy or professional. People don't enjoy that. They want to know the real you. And so just building that confidence in that has been a big part, I think.
Yeah, that makes a world of difference. When you can get your content strategy to click, I feel like that's just where all of a sudden you go from like taking steps to like you're on an escalator, essentially. Like things just start speeding up so exponentially once your content efforts and your strategy just slots into place and gives the person on the other side what they need to say, like, yeah, let's go, let's do it.
And with every business and every health journey as well, I always find so many parallels between like health journeys and business journeys. Patience.
Yes.
I think there might be a bit of belief that online business is quick, like it's the easy way, it's the quick way, you can have overnight success.
This idea of 0 to 10k in 30 days and all of that sort of stuff is definitely still hanging around, even though it's getting displaced in the space, it's still there.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that it's going to be quick, it's going to be easy, it's going to be like really sexy, and in like 3 months you're going to be sat by the pool in Mauritius with your laptop, and it's just not the case. It's not reality. Like it still requires all of the same like graft and consistency and a lot of patience.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I think patience maybe isn't the strong suit of budding entrepreneurs. So
no,
probably
definitely
something
not.
that they need to hear.
No, and like you'll have the high months and the low months, and you might hit like your best month ever. And this has happened to me. You have a best month ever, and you're like, brilliant, this is it now. I'm on a roll. And the next month, no clients. And you're like, what did I do wrong? I didn't do anything different. And just like, just expect to feel totally out of control most of the time.
I will say, I think it's settled though. I'd almost, like you were saying earlier, that 2-year mark, things do seem to, like, they won't magically fix themselves. If you don't have the strategies and the processes in place, you will still be stuck in that position. But yeah, usually at least the big peaks and troughs will kind of become smaller hills and dips than like very drastic changes. It does, the longer that you do it, your reputation gets there, that your content efforts, your following, like everything is just growing as you go. So it gets easier over time, but yeah, it's not as easy as people make it out to be still.
No, definitely not. And it's annoying because there are those people who it seems like it was really easy. And, you know, they're the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to be that person, but it's
not.
And
it can be, but yeah, you kind of got to get there first, and then it can be easy rather than just like, I'm going to set up my business and this is going to be a walk in the park. Now, you kind of started to mention there, we talked about revenue very slightly. I can imagine that there was a big change when you went from a brick and mortar business to working online, but I wondered what impact that transition had in your revenue, primarily in your kind of profitability and some of the other things that come into place with making money online.
Well, I could pay myself. That was quite nice.
Okay.
Yeah, like the turnover numbers when you have a brick and mortar can be huge. Yeah. And they call them the vanity metrics, don't they? But there's so many outgoings. There's not a lot left by the time you've paid all of your bills and paid your staff. I found there was never much left for me. Whereas now my outgoings are very, very small. Like, my biggest expense is my business coaching, and that's something that I would never be without. Mm-hmm. So that's like my favorite expense in a way. But now, like, I'm actually able to pay myself money because there's money in the account. Mm-hmm. And it's not just going to paying electricity bills, water bills, rent, council tax, you know, like, it was absolutely just, my list of expenses was endless.
I can imagine. And people hear about brick and mortar businesses making like X amount a year and them having these really high turnover numbers. But yeah, I have seen firsthand that profitability can absolutely take a nosedive because you have an additional expenses. If you think about even just renting a house or like buying a house, the bills that you have coming out each month, you've got all of those coming out of your business if you have a location. Plus you've got business rates, plus you've got still your taxes that you're going to have to pay and employee payments that you've got to make, upkeep of the property and new equipment. All of a sudden, these massive revenue figures start to look much smaller because it's like, well, you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds just to turn the lights on of a morning.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing.
I mean, I feel like I'm talking, there's a way to build brick and mortar businesses and have really powerful, profitable, like wonderful businesses there. But I just come from the perspective of loving the online space so much more and getting to see how minimal the outbound can be, and getting to keep and reinvest or treat yourself with that profit that you now have compared to what usually happens in brick and mortar.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to like poo-poo brick and mortar businesses. Same. Because I have so much respect for people that can sustainably grow them and then open new facilities and franchise and all of that. I just think it's absolutely incredible. I found it a headache personally. It just wasn't for me. Yeah.
And I grew up with some background here. So I don't run a brick and mortar business, but my grandparents were landlords, and they were landlords from when I was 3 to when I was 17. So I've seen what a brick and mortar business is run like. So I am still speaking of having, well, quite literally lived that, living above the flat in the pub when we were kids, and getting to see like Christmas where it was like, well, the pub's open now, guys, so you go and play with your toys and we'll be downstairs and we'll be back up when doors shut in 4 hours time. And it just, there is no way around it for a lot of traditional businesses, that there's the insane hours and the really high costs. But when people can build brick and mortar in a way that's profitable and works for them, it's like, to me, they're magicians. They're wonderful, incredible, like the unicorns of people.
How did you do that?
Yeah, just looking on in awe.
Yeah, that was a really good window into business for you then, growing up above a pub, because they're open all the damn time, aren't they?
Yes, I think that's why I do it. Is because my grandparents went out of business when I was about 17, which first and foremost was actually rude because I was about to turn 18 and have access to a pub, and all of a sudden they went out of business.
Oh no, such bad timing.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I see how it is. But yeah, they went out of business, and I think at that time I was also trying to figure out what I was going to want to do. I mean, I was very young, but teachers in school and you're picking your A levels and university and all that sort of stuff. I think that's what sent me down this route, was seeing what they went through and being like, well, can I help other people not have to deal with this level of stress? And it was intense for the whole family, I think, not just even my grandparents, but my mum worked in the pub, my uncle worked in the pub for a time. Like, it was, we're all roped in.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. One of those businesses, isn't it?
Yeah. I think my
Family
first
business.
job was glass collecting at probably 12 on like a busy barbecue out the back garden on bank holiday weekend or something like that. Well, thank you so much for your insight and those really important reminders for the people on the other side watching. And not just that, but the context of where your business has taken you and how it was versus how it is now is, I'm sure, very inspirational to a lot of the people listening along and hearing what you've done. I will say, for everybody watching this, I'm going to pop in the description box below where you can connect with Amy, but she's kindly mentioned that she has a free Facebook group that she can invite you all to as well, called Fit Over 30, over on Facebook, that the link will be below. Would you just quickly tell people what they can expect for that group so that they can get sold, so to speak, to go and sign up today?
Of course. So my Facebook group is for women over 30, hence the name Fit Over 30. And it's all about hormones, metabolism, and weight loss. So if you're the kind of woman who feels like you're doing everything right, like you're trying all the things and it's still not working, then this is a great group for you. Or if you're the kind of woman who is like totally all or nothing, you try things for a short period of time and then you can't be bothered, and so you're just never finding anything that really feels sustainable for you, then this is a great group for you as well. So we talk about all things hormones, metabolism, weight loss for women over 30.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your time with us and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome. You're welcome.